Let's begin. Well, thank you for coming. Today, we finished this lunch talks this term. For me, it's an important day because the whole academic year we've been dealing with a topic, the design techniques of the architects, that is composed in a monograph for A+T. We have used the symposia that we have celebrated in fall and spring on design techniques. We have used these lunch talks that many of you have come regularly, and also like the conventional lectures at Piper, like Langarita and Passal the other day, to bring designers to this school, many of them teaching now here, that are innovative, that are producing something that is, I would say, unique, and that, in our opinion, and I mean with the committee that is supporting all these things with me, in our opinion, are showing new directions that will be successful sooner or later. I mean, I just will read the names of all that have been involved. Sharon Johnston and Mark Lee, Janet Kuo, that will be teaching next year in this school. Sharon and Mark are teaching. Philip Ram, that was teaching in fall and will come back. Camilo Restrepo, that was teaching in fall and will come back. Neil Leach and Carles Muro, that were like the critics of the first design technique symposium. Enrique Walker, that was the introductor of the second design technique symposium. Momoyo Kajima from Atelier Bow. Tom Emerson from 6A. Kirsten Gears from Office. Florian Edinburgh, who is teaching here. Tom is teaching in Zurich. Kirsten is teaching here and will be coming back also. Momoyo will be teaching next spring. Silvia Benedito, who is also today responding Victor and Maria. And Antoine Picon responding the second symposium. And independently, we had Cristina Diaz Moreno and Efraín García Grinda. We had Nerea Calvillo in this room. We had Mason White and Lola Sefar from Lateral Office in Canada that will be teaching in this school next fall. We have had Anne Lacaton and Jean-Philippe Passal and Iñaki Abols and Renata Sienkiewicz also. and we have today Maria Langarita and Victor Navarro. Victor is teaching, Maria is pregnant and is coming just to say hello and present this 20-30 minutes talk. I mean, both of them were born in Spain, studied in different schools in Pamplona and in Madrid, and they teach in the School of Madrid, and now Victor in the Graduate School of Design here in Harvard. They have won a lot of, I mean, they are really young and they have won a lot of very important European awards, like the Mies van der Rohe special mention for younger than 40 years old architects. Very recently, they have been involved in a couple of biennales of architecture in Spain and in the Spanish pavilion of the Biennale in Venice this year. They have won many other awards that I'm not going to list. And they have won these awards, being able to construct a career that is based in incredible skills for design, and you will notice it very soon, and a lot of imagination and clarity of ideas. The respondents will be Marcos Garcia Rojo, that is co-teaching with, is here in the first row, and is co-teaching with Anne Lacaton, the Option Studio, this spring. He's a kind of freelance architect, but he is a freelance that has been involved in Lacaton and Passal I don't know how many years, so I wouldn't call it freelance. A close collaborator of, and sometimes a freelance, but he's dealing with a 5-star hotel in Dakar. That was the last thing that Lacaton and Passal presented the other day, and he has works in Mali and Paris as well, and he has collaborated also with other offices like Jean Nouvel. Also studied in Madrid. And Silvia, she didn't study in Madrid.
Thank God. I studied in Portugal. go there.
Yeah, very close. But she has an office based in Germany, Oficina, and she obviously is an assistant professor in this school, and she's the co-chair of the sensory media platform and in this school. And for 5-6 years she was involved in the best years of James Corner field operation. And so she's in between architecture and landscape and sensory media, wherever, atmospheres, let's say. Well, this is the panel, and that's it. Let's begin. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Hi, hello, hola. Thank you, Iñaki, for inviting us, for introducing us, and thank you everybody for being here during this time. I will make a short resume of how are we going to develop this lecture today. We are going to start with a statement. For us, describing is design, is the same as design. To describe is to design. Then we will share with you a description of the world based on what we have developed some design techniques. And then we will show how these design techniques perform in 4 projects that deal with existing architecture. It doesn't mean that there's the only design techniques involved on those designs, but we think it will be enough just to, because we don't have as much time, and to make it more clear. Okay. So, as I say, for us, to describe is to design. Creativity can be defined as the search of new possibilities on given reality. And every description of the world opens up a precise order of possibilities. This order will support a set of intervention agendas, and these agendas become projects, and in turn these projects will turn out a worldview. Okay, and for us architecture deals with life, but it deals with life by managing the physical part of the environment. And by studying ways of how this materiality performs and exists, we have come up with this vision. Architecture can be categorized in relation to its consistency. So we bring this vast and pelt concept that is a way to categorize the material part of the world in order to its consistency, and we have translated into we call it busto y pellejo. When we have translated into bust and pelt. I don't know if pelt is the right word, because pellejo is a very precise word. Well, is for example, this is a skin, but this is pellejo. We will say that the pelt is the skin seeking for independence. So the bust, or the busto, is the part which is hard, is inorganic, it stands on time, it has a slow erosion, and it normally is mineral, but not always. And its transformation implies a very expensive means. It's very difficult to transform. It's not impossible, but it's not easy. And architectural archives, cultural archives, have learned how to talk about it, write about it, and how to take care of the bust. The bust doesn't need a life to survive. It just doesn't. It can be preserved without living people or living things. On the other hand, the pelt, or the pellejo, is organic. It's soft, it turns rotten and vicious. It decomposes easily. It doesn't need a special training to intervene over it. It just recollects tools. The pelt has a difficult reading because how it gets to us. It doesn't not stand by itself. It needs action of the living and its affection to get visible. And generally, it doesn't not resist the pass of time, not in a good shape. I'm going to around here these two images. They are from the same street in Madrid. The one on the left is the Brown Murillo Street. It's a street in Madrid as a picture from the 30s. And on the right, we have the same street. It's just a recent picture. But we can see that the pelt, the pellejo part, is the one is missing. We have not preserved it because its fragility, but also because we as a society we don't have, because heritage regulation doesn't protect the pelt. But we think that the pelt, along with the bust, they make they open an amazing world possibilities for having the city or having architecture. And both of them, bust and the pelt, as part of the physical part of the world, are responsibility, forms part of the architecture field of work. Now, Victor is going to talk about these 4 projects that deal with existing. For us, we work a lot with existing, is what we like the best in the office. It's not a nostalgic approach, it's not only as a result of a crisis, economic crisis situation or context. It's because, as we like describing, as you must notice, existing buildings is open. It starts with a description. They are like a party that has already started, and it's full of buzz. But if you look carefully on existing buildings, you might find some pelt. So that's why because we design on a conversation basis, and describing and convincing and flattering. That's why we really love working with existence. So now we are going to show you 4 strategies around bust and pelt, and we'll talk later.
So, well, the first one is taxidermy. Taxidermy, obviously, it deals with the pelt. No, it's when there is no bones and no meat, and then only you have the skin, and then you have to transform it to something. So you need a structure. You work in this case with wires and nails. So that's what we made in this. This is our first design technique, no, taxidermy. We made a contest in Mexico, DF. It's the Pabellón Archivo. It's really close to the Barragán house. That it's. Do they have a point? No.
Yeah, she is the pointer.
She is the pointer. And so this is the Barragán house. We made. He had the office really close, and this was a pavilion for a summer pavilion in the center of the garden. An amazing place. It was full of lianas, trees, exuberant vegetation that you were expecting Tarzan to cross, or to pass by to the place. And we thought that all this was pelt, and all this was the material we needed to use. So we just added like a simple thing. No, we decided to use all the lianas, all the vegetation as the cover to create this field of operations, for example. Yeah. And we just created this ring using the structure of the walls, the existing walls, big walls, hard enough to support this ring. And then with a metallic mesh, we created this vegetation roof. It was a simple action to create a place that people could use in the worst hours of the day, no, with the sun, and also at night, just as a ceiling. No? We thought that this ring could be just a way of equip the site with some electricity, lighting, and water. No, just what was needed for this kind of activities that were going to take place. And as simple as this, we imagine this kind of action, you know, working like a taxidermist. Second one is quite different, but it works again with the same idea. A Street Fighter. A Street Fighter is a video game, but it's also a design technique. It's the bust and the pelt has their own properties. They have their own superpowers, and you can visualize really easy how they can deal in a kind of battle. So we decided to use these kind of superpowers in a competition, and we use this Street Fighter as the motto of the competition. A Street Fighter, La Serrería versus La Cosa. That it means the Serrería is like the sawmill, and La Cosa is like, I don't know, the thing, no? Yeah, the thing. What has the thing? The thing has all the elements that were needed to transform this existing building into a 20th century first building. All the facilities, technical installations, regulations. That's it. And the Serrería was something that was given. No, Serrería was placed, and its place here. This is el Paseo del Prado. This is el Museo del Prado, Reina Sofía, Old Museum of Madrid. This is the Kaiser Forum of Ercegón de Merón. I'm sure you know it. So we were really close. It was these two was the last industrial buildings that were alive, no? Still alive in this area of Madrid. And we found that the superpowers of the existing was this kind of concrete structure, one of the first made in the 20th century in Madrid, industrial, made with concrete, hard, easy to erase, and protected by the heritage. And this is how we found. So it was not too much different between the existing and we found. Just the windows were quite broken. No, the belt was starting to, take out from the bones. But we thought that instead of working with a nostalgic view or a kind of a surgery, like adding Botox or silicone, we decided to think that the Cosa could be like an alien that could just be introduced into this building, and with some clear and some clear elements, develop an instrument, a sampler. This is what we think is the most interesting part of La Cosa, is that it allows, because of its materials, because of his kind of performance, to make different kinds of action. And the people who is there can easily transform, can easily remove, can easily activate it. If I'm let me know. So, yeah, faster, sorry. Faster. La Cosa, inside the existing building. La Cosa, it has an outside part and an inside part. So the pink parts are made on textile, and the yellow parts are made on plywood. Also, materials of the pelt. It's against of the structure of the concrete structure that falls into the ground. This is hanged. It works like a puppet. It's made of textiles. Everything is made of textiles, and we're going to show you 2 minutes video. It doesn't take too long. To show you how this is a performance place. It's a media lab, so I guess you know what is a media lab. You have the original one here, close to here. And this is a media facade that deals also with this idea of how this pelt can be transformed and used. There are several properties of the pelt. One is that, and we have assigned the mechanical things and the electrical things, this idea of the pelt, because those have the same obsolescence time as the pelt. I mean, nowadays the mechanical things, they last for maybe 20 years, and the plywood is going to last 20 years also. So it's like in a way they are on the same time. Also, the pelt is used to show some kind of properties of the space. It can be really easily transformed. They can open these walls, they can add other parts, they can remove things. And as Media Lab, it's made with a lot of people who act not in the, it acts in the process, no? Obviously, they are aware about how things can be changed. As you can see, also the mechanical things are made with textiles, so they inflate and disinflate or whatever. And it's not just because we think it's important because it's made of pelt, but also because it can allow people to visualize how the energy is consumed or not. No? So if there is inflated, no, just like this, but if not, it turns like fluffy. And yeah, like the pelt, fluffy. And also, another important thing was like this, like the internal part of the cosa is that it can be programmed. So artists can use this LED system that is inside to create their own specific arts as the media facade that we showed you at the beginning of the video. So all these components create like the show. The next design technique is the time channels. And this is a really exciting tool that we have used oftentimes, but we are going to show you in this project. Time channels means that it's a technique, design technique made or used in films. In order to have the narrative of the films, it transports people from the present to the future, and from the future to the past. No? And in architecture, we have our own time channels and our buildings. The heritage buildings can be seen as the most efficient tunnel machine that the man has ever made. And that's why we can, in some way, now understand how Pompeian people were living, because it's the, even if the paint is spelled, what it's, no, the bust can bring them to the future. So we took this idea and we thought, well, this is a water tank in Matadero. Matadero is a cultural complex that is here. We were around here at the first time. Now we are on the south of Madrid. And it was close to this boy. It was like a like a empty place with, yeah. And this was going to be transformed into a huge hub, transportation hub, like excavated transportation hub. So we decided to think how we could keep the memory of this place using the superpowers of transformation. So we made this place was where the workers of the Matadero used to have their orchards, their plants, so the vineyards, the figs, these things that they were eating in between their works. So we took all these plants and we decided to create like a Noah's Ark of Matadero. So all the plants that were outside were moved, not them, because the plants were not important. It was important not exactly plants, but some just the species. And we moved them to the interior of the water tank in order to let them be alive. So we could keep the memory of that place, and recreated like a 1-minute walk garden. So it takes just a short walk to see the place. So at the end, it's beautiful because it can work as the DeLorean. The architecture can be seen as this supercar that can bring things as the almanac, and change the future if you're not careful. And yeah, okay.
And the last design technique we are going to share with you is this: the fast-forward rewind technique is related to the different speed that can both bust and pelt perform. We all know what is the speed of the bust because we have the experience. We know how slow it gets erosioned. It gets transformed by water, wind, or crisis, or political parties. But the pelt has different. It has an open field of for speed up interventions. This is in the same cultural complex, Matadero. This is called Nave 15. The water tank was here, and we were asked for art in an emergency and very strategical project. The Red Bull Music Academy is an event, is a cultural event designed by this company that is about to gather 30 people together from all the world every year in a different city of a different country, and to allow them to share their knowledge about music between them and with people, relevant people of the musical scene of the place where they are. In 2011, this event was going to be held in Tokyo, but because of this, everybody knows this disaster, the Fukushima disaster, the company decided to move the plot from Tokyo to any other place. This is a very complex event that normally takes like 2 years, 1.5 years to be set, and in this case we only have like 5 months to find a different city in a different country with a space ready to be transformed into the Red Bull Music Academy. In this case it was Spain, Madrid, the one who took the challenge. They said, okay, we can do it in 5 months. And we have this space, which is in Matadero, and it was the only of this warehouse in Matadero where that didn't been intervened yet, so it was empty space. Not really empty. It was being used as a trash space, or it was like a mess.
Yeah.
But still, we have something that was given. We have this existing building that has some properties. The existing building has these boost properties, which we have a waterproof cover, really good ventilation, because this space was used to keep pigs before they go into the Matadero. Matadero is a slaughterhouse, but now turned into a cultural complex. But at the beginning of the 20th century, there was pigs before become pork. Okay, we didn't have time, as we told, and we didn't have a super big budget. There was a 5,000 square meter space, and we didn't have no money, no time to, for example, give a standard climate comfort for everything. We knew, before even knowing the functional program, that we should go for small pieces, independent pieces. So we came up with this idea, statement for the project, and we won this very small competition with these 3 slides. That was the Red Bull Music Academy was not going to be a building, it couldn't, but was going to be a city. This that allowed us to try again this Bust and Pelt research, but also a city as a metaphor can help a multi-layer strategy of design, which is allowed us to have some parts completely designed at the same time with other parts are just from sketching. So it was going to be a city, but it was going to be a pelt city, because the Matadero complex, which is surrounded by a wall that keeps all the vegetable wall or the greenery outside. So we decided it was going to be a green city. Not only green city, it was going to be a paradise city, a musical Eden. And this is the final look of the project, both the existing and the city and the pelt. I go very fast. There was just 3 different constructive systems, one for the small spaces, social spaces, and this very specific recording studio that was needed. All the construction systems were designed and were brought to the place because of the many strategic situations. For example, we needed to isolate acoustically those small spaces for musicians to research and to practice, but we didn't have the money to make these very sophisticated walls between them, so we decided to spread it out around the place, because the only thing we have enough or more than enough was space, and we were using the air between boxes to increase the isolation. At the same time, we elevated from the ground so we can have, because we could have more space than we need, and because of the crisis, we could have a lot of people working at the same time in the space. So we elevated from the ground, so we couldn't have people working below, over, inside, and outside every one of the units at the same time.
And also we avoided to have foundations, no?
Yeah, foundations are super fast.
Yeah, super fast. Foundations are fast.
And I didn't say, but we had like 3 weeks for designing and 9 weeks for construction, and we did it. This is the inside of one of the boxes. This is another one. This is how we cover the public and the collective space. In this case, isolation was not that important, but where something was happening here, everybody was here. There was nobody like working by himself where somebody from the Motown was talking about his experience. In this case, what was necessary was to have acoustic comfort. And what we needed was a lot of absorptive surface. So the project was designed very super fast, and we didn't get the number of how much amount of absorptive surface we needed until the end. So we came up with this idea of a suspended ceiling, regular suspended ceiling made of plaster. That was on the budget how it was described. And then we were increasing the surface of it. Let's see the final surface of these stones. This is the interior. The only thing we had planning on these 4 weeks of construction time, and 4 of them in August, was a canopy for shadows center, and we used it. This is the third type of space. This one was super specific because here acoustic isolation needed to be extremely precise, extremely good. Mainly because the most part of the music that is recorded here is electronic music that use a lot of low frequency sounds. Because high frequency sounds are easily to cut with a multi-layer wall, but for the grave sounds you need massive elements. Normally those kind of studios are made on concrete, but we couldn't use concrete because I didn't say, but this project needed to be removed. It's a temporary project that is going to be removed anytime in the future or in the present.
Fast forward, no?
This is the fast forward.
No, rewind.
So we came with this idea of sandbags to create this wall, very massive wall of sand. This is the last element, which is the garden that that creates this coherence needed for the project, for this identity, for this kind of community or collective space for creative people. But in this case, we have to use the rewind property again, because as it's going to be removed as the same as the constructed elements, we wanted to give these trees a second life, so we planted in big pots, and then we place it like with the shape of a hill, covered with some mud and some soil, and create this landscape that you can see. This is a picture of the day of the beginning of the academy.
So all the plants can be removed after its use, as if they were in a vivero or version.
And this is an image of how it is now, the same space, because of bureaucratic or disagreements between the trademark and the city council. There's not been occupied by humans now, but it is still growing, and it's still a musical space because it's full of animals, birds, and mouse.
It's becoming more pelt.
Because it was one of the properties of the pelt. The pelt keep on growing, can keep on growing. And that's it.
Yeah.
That's it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Sylvia. Suppose that you make a comment, and then they respond, and then we open to the panel.
Okay, so thanks for sharing. I will try to be as precise as you have been. So I just want to, well, first of all, I'm going to start by the end. So it means that I will ask you my question and then try to elaborate of why I'm asking the question, so you can think about, maybe think about the answer.
Sorry, I forgot especially, I didn't see him. He's the student that was going to participate. What is it? Sylvia Marcos. Go on.
I was going to ask, picking up on what Iñaki said about innovation, do you have a consensus of being innovative? And also, like, is it in your case, if you feel like you are being innovative, is it like a reaction to anything, or is it naturally happening? Yeah. Because that would be the question, and the reason why I'm asking that, it's because in the end, when you describe your design techniques, like a Street Fighter, time tunnels, fast forward, in the end they look, I mean, you put the bust and you put the pelt, but I would argue that the bust is not in your work, or it's a given condition in the end. It's like it's not, in the end, the innovation comes by the restoration of the pelty condition, and not like Terry Gilliam in Brazil, where the pelt is with Botox, with surgery and so on, but something which is different, and is questioning many assumptions in traditional architecture, with traditional approaches to architecture. It has to do with obsolescence, with the use of history, typologies, ready-made techniques, and I don't know if that is actually a position, or that is a reaction to something that happens to be contemporary production. So that's, and the other question is, do you have a plan for that? Do you have a position?
So I will just respond to the last part. Maria will make the first one. I mean, we have choose just a few projects. We have just choose these ones that obviously shows this relation between pelt and bust, and because we love to work on the existing, but we have made also some works without, I mean, that are not on the existing, and we have also used this kind of technique. So we have created some of the bust, some part of the bust and some part of the pelt, but just to be not to be on timing, we have just choose this for. We thought it was like better, no? More clear. And about innovation.
Well, this is like a very personal question, but I would say that is because we cannot say we are innovative or not. It's not for us to say. But what I can share with you is that we design in a conversation basis. We design, Victor and I, with people in the studio, in a very intimate and comfortable situation, but always by talking and with a conversation attitude that implies to the need of flatter, to convince, to conquer, to delight, to amuse the other, to impress the other. So many of the decisions or conclusions that we might end up in some projects came for the seeking of impress the partner. So on this kind of close and laboratorized situation, maybe some kind of innovation can appear, but it's just vanity and flattering.
And also because what is interesting about describing is that it brings a description. I mean, description is in a certain way transmutation of value. So you describe something in a specific way, and it turns into something different. That's what we say. And by making that, you are in a certain way, make it an innovation. I don't know if it's like important innovation, but in terms of dialogue, it brings like this kind of transmutation value.
Yeah, we are very influenced by this Boris Groy's statement that innovation is to the new is to change the value of the existing. So you can change it just by describing it. So something valuable.
And
Right,
we don't have
I will start
yeah.
with the beginning, your beginning. Sorry, with the beginning. When you said to describe is to design, and I find it fascinating. And congratulations, the presentation is fun, it's fresh, it's great. But in this sense of description, which is something that I find it very appealing, because to describe is also, is to narrate, it's about storytelling, it's about even other disciplines, about film, the way that they describe space and the way that they describe experiences. So basically you were describing experiences. I'm still not convinced that you were describing techniques. And I think that's when my challenge, or I would like also to understand a little bit your position. There's clearly a resistance to embrace the architectural language. Like, okay, what is bust and what is pelt? So what is, and I know that your design is very, very strong, but if we kind of minimize the use of metaphors, the bust, the pelt, the time tunnels, the street fighters, what are we going to have to describe real architecture and real design techniques? And maybe your innovation is not about using these terms. Maybe your innovation goes really into the questioning of the type. What type of types are you creating that are new? And it's something that probably you might ask, you might think about or respond, is the type that is a new type that is promoted through material research, botanical research, spatial research, so on and so forth. So maybe that's a kind of a question. The second question is about still storytelling. When you present your project to a client, are you telling them, listen, I'm going to design the pelt of this thing? Do you talk on these terms to the client? Or is that just an academic conversation and to write about it and all this intellectual rhetoric that we do about architecture?
We use a lot of metaphors, if you want to call them metaphors, but we don't think are metaphors. Part of the design process, and we cannot separate the thinking from the action as if they were, like the world that it's here, and then you blah blah blah, and then and then AutoCAD, it's the two. We combine them, and it's, I mean, if we believe in it, and as we said, the Street Fighter was the motto of the contest, and we said the Serreria versus La Cosa, and we won with that, and I guess that I don't know, I mean, maybe we were lucky with the jury, but I think they really believe that keeping the existence as it was and using this pelt, at that time we didn't call it pelt because we didn't have noticed it. So this is something that, as in a conversation, suddenly you realize that some kind of things appears, and some kind of things, they can have a name. And once you're able to name them, suddenly it gets like the yesterday we were talking about this, the high speed,
the Millennium Falcon.
The Millennium Falcon. Suddenly you turn out the bottom and then shoot. It goes really fast because you are able to share with a lot of people that things, not only between us, but with the people of the office, with the client, with you.
And with the construction process, for us it's super important to in order to reach some of the results of our design, it's not only about how it's designed, we also have to design the process of the construction. And for example, as you said, this is not only an academic role, then move to a real architecture, what you call, for us this is real architecture. And it doesn't mean that we don't take care of materials or constructive details. We know how to do it very well. We have it inside of us. But where we share and we research is the other part, how to think about it. And for example, La Cosa versus Herreria, the thing versus, was not only part of the contest where the jury were architects, but was only part of the construction process. And when we were in the construction moment, we were, where is the smither? I can't find him. He's in the COSA, and we were working there. Everybody, because as we understand, architecture is not only made by architects, but what architects make, beside the design, are the diplomatic force of architecture. And we design not only the objects, but we design the vocabulary is going to be used, and the space where architecture is going to be discussed. For example, for us, super important, the drawings, how we draw. It's not only because we have fun drawing, it's because over a drawing, over a big draw, is where all the discussions in a construction moment are held. And we design the space where this discussion is going to be held. And this is very important for us. This is a superpower that architecture has. It's the same as the diplomatic, military diplomacy, where they can turn down the air condition and make everybody freezing to speed up a solution. We do the same, but with vocabulary, some metaphors, shared metaphors, cultural share, and with drawing.
Yeah, and also because for us, what is really interesting is that the affections are the ones who can keep the belt
and the bust
moving. So you have to give reasons to the people and to provide reasons to allow this bust and the belt, these materials, to be kept.
To travel in time.
That is to get the energies.
Right, but it seems like the fundamental issue here is about evocation, and it's about imagination that these words carry. So you're kind of, on a certain way, using also your vocabulary, like the way that you draw, the way that you talk, is really allowing people to embrace your storytelling, through imagination. Maybe it's not super directed, super didactic, it's about this collaborative imagination.
Because we need to roll affections in order to keep the energy that is being invested, because we think this is sustainability.
Yeah, I actually find one of your point really fascinating, because I think it's radical to simply say creativity is a set of possibility on a given reality. But then a question immediately strikes me is, because most of your project, it seems to be a response and intervention of an existing. But then, what is your attitude towards tabula rasa then? Because historically, architects always like to use that as a siteless site to generate new invention. But then, do you think there is still some value in it, or you think it's just a pure fiction?
There's no tabula rasa possible. It's impossible. It's just a way of describing the world. Tabula rasa is a way of describing the world when you doesn't include some part of it. You cannot include all the parts, all elements, all the cultural archives included in one moment. We learn to simplify. It's how we perceive the world. But we are not against tabula rasa. We think it's not possible. There's always something there. There's never a white paper. It's never an empty place.
Can I ask you, because I know that you had won a competition very recently, and then they changed the site. What about the tabula rasa? Have you maintained the project, or have you changed it?
We haven't signed a new contract.
It's not for us to say.
Yeah, so we don't have the new site already, but we have.
I thought you had it.
No. We know we're gonna have one. We hope they're gonna hire us again, but we have worked several times in what we call empty plot, and we have done it several times, and we have used the same approach sometimes. I mean, for example, in Casa Doble, we thought that it could be we could have like a bust. It means that we could have a part of the house that was already built, like a kind of modern house. We are not trying to be innovative always. We use some kind of development, and then suddenly we added a double house, another part that it was made on wood, and it could be made by the people. It was not finished, so the people that live there could transformed. And we have made side road restaurants where those kind of things were also involved in terms of time. The people who was going to spend, because it was like an infrastructure of weddings and roadside restaurants. So it was exciting also how to deal with the 5 minutes coffee and 24 hours party, there. So, and those things were involved. But we think a lot of, in terms of a strategy, more informed, so this helps us. Sure.
I think that we have to open to the public. Iñaki. I just want to say that I've been discouraged that we have Silvia, Luis, Iñaki, Silvia, Marcos, and a lot of people that are dealing with materials that are natural, used as materials of construction, and in your work. No? I mean, so yes, it's just like I was looking at the audience and it was, well, yeah.
Actually, it's 2 questions. First one is it necessary?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So first one is about tools. I completely agree that tools define, in many ways, research and result. But when I go into this Street Fighter tool in particular, I find that the result is really about these 2 apparently opposites, but it's really more about dancing than fighting. You could say it's a Beauty and the Beast, rather, dancing rather than fighting. So how much of the process within the tool are you interested in? So it, to describe what you're actually looking at the operation. So it's not about so much a state of affairs, but more about the relation that it creates through how you look at it. And the second question is about this architecture as diplomacy, or as a diplomatic tool, whatever you want to say, call it. How specific it is to the Madrid or even the Spanish environment, and how much it could be migrated into something, into a different condition that you guys are not so familiar with. Because it seems like it would be something very, very local in terms of your own experience and what is expected from an architect. But I'm curious if you have ever thought, or you have an experience of bringing it to another place.
Well, I answered the last one. In this case, for example, we didn't change our way in the context of Arequipa. That is a contest we won in Peru. We decided to keep this idea of how this building could be used now in a specific term that was the Perumin, that is a convention of minery, but then also how it could be transformed and evolved with the pelt, in a certain way. And I don't know if, they understood clearly what were our goals in this project, and they decided it was better to have this one than the other ones that were more vast in a certain way. So I guess it's something that we share. I don't know how. It's hard to say if what we do it's able to be understood abroad, because we haven't built anything abroad, but it works. I guess. Yeah.
And the first one, Street Fighter is defined as a game which objective is to kill the adversary. That is not. It's ready to fight, to be in the moment, to be dancing, or we have all the time we have used the metaphor for the Cerreria and La Cosa, as if you have held in a party in your house and you invited this neighbor, which is like 70 years old, and you like it, nice. That is kind of bored in a one corner. And then you say, well, I don't want him to go home like feeling old and pity of himself. I just introduce some pretty or boy or girl, whatever, and make a conversation start and a new thing happen between the two. It's just not one or the other, it's the two. It's the same technique.
Because for us, we design the material of the architecture in a certain way, but what is Media Lab is the in-between. The Media Lab, the people who is dealing with that, it's between the Cosa and between the Cerreria. And we cannot design that, the actions they're going to make, how they're going to perform. We allow the place for the dancing, in a certain way. We create the how do you call
The room.
The room.
We set the room, and then the party happened.
One last question, yes, please.
Well, thank you so much. I really enjoyed a lot your presentation. And I will bring back to the economic context. I have seen in different times of different young architects like you really embracing the economical crisis. And my question goes that for me, what is very interesting is that you have been challenged by the traditional model of design where economics, where the money was a tool of control, really embrace this challenge of creativity by scarcity. So my question is if you see this like an emerging trend, that in a certain way it's kind of reshaping the design processes, and at the same time how this could inform like the future schools of design in Spain, or like an alternative model of design.
I would say we could make a historic narrative of the presence of the bust and the pelt in architecture since the beginning of architecture. This is not a new situation. But what happened on a crisis or crisis description of crisis situation is that the bust operations, the operations over the bust, stop in some way. So it makes more visible the operations over the pelt. But it doesn't mean that it wasn't pelt before, just it was not visible as much. But it happened the same at in the 18th century midterm with the crisis, economic crisis, with the changing of the coin to the paper coin. It happened the same. The operations over the bust stopped because there was no security about the money, but and make visible all the operations over the pelt. That's the Rococo moment, for example. It doesn't mean that it wasn't pelt before or after. It's more visible. We don't think it's a new situation what we have now.
It's like thinking in terms of furniture instead of buildings, and I think that's the shift. But it has always been there, like furniture in the world.
When there's a lot of money, architecture tries to bustify and to pass into pass it into stone. For example, there's a Barroco. And sometimes the pelt get independent because it's more, it's fast, it's cheaper. Because what humans and society and the world needs is all the time changing and doing things. If you cannot do it with the stone, we will do it with some music, but it's all the time the same. So we now are describing the world this way, and we're acting in this description, but it's not.
Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you for and thank you, Wesley. I didn't introduce you. This is